Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Today we are talking CI/CD in the cloud with TeamCity and Octopus Cloud. Okay, let's start with some housekeeping. So, you'll be no requirement to record today. We'll email you this in the next week or so. All questions, if you can, use Zoom Q&A. If you are using one of our streams, such as YouTube, please do, if you can, we will try and get to it, but if you can, join our community Slack on octopus.com/Slack, join the webinar channel, and I'll try and get to your questions as part of today's webinar. So I'm Derek Campbell, Senior Solutions Architect at Octopus Deploy. Today, I'm joined by Marco Baylor, who is a developer advocate at JetBrains. Hey, Marco, how are you today?
Hello, Derek. I'm great. Yourself?
I'm good. I'm really looking forward to today's session.
So am I.
We've been through it a few times, and I think it's got some really good stuff. We are going to be talking about Java. We do actually have another session that I recorded 2 years ago. It was actually one of my first ever webinars with Octopus, and I actually done it on Octopus and TeamCity as well. So if you do have a .NET requirement, please check that out. But today, so what are we going to be demoing today, Marco?
Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to build a tiny build pipeline in TeamCity Cloud, which we recently launched, and it's going to build a small Java Spring Boot application, and then just put it onto Octopus Deploy so that you can later on actually deploy it.
Yeah, and that's also using cloud as well. So the thing I love about this is we're going to do a full CI/CD in the cloud, and we won't touch a server that we manage. So let's jump in and start.
Yes.
So at this point, it's over to you, Marco.
Cool. Thanks. So just a bit of background, because I don't like slides too much and theory too much. What we're going to do is we're going to create a brand new cloud instance, TeamCity Cloud instance from scratch, and then configure our build pipeline there with live coding, live configuration. And I actually do invite you to follow along, because you can do everything as I do, as you see here, and you'll have a running build up in just a couple of minutes. So the first step would be to go to jetbrains.com, TeamCity/cloud. You could also just go to teamcity.com, and it's going to redirect you. And you want to start a free trial here. So I'm just going to put my email address here, marcobela@jetbrains.com. Start building for free. It's a 14-day free trial. And let me just open up my email account to find the activation link inside. Right. Got that. And I'm going to fill in a bit of data about myself, Marco Baylor, the company, some company. Right, submit. And the last thing you need to do is you need to choose the domain name under which your TeamCity Cloud instance will be available. And I'm just going to go with Octopus. It's a joint webinar, so maybe Octopus Brains. Let's see how that works out. Right?
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, and it's going to take us up to 2 minutes until the server is starting up, and I'm just going to walk you through the project that I prepared. I have a GitHub project. It's called TC Build Pipelines, and actually, if you want to have the same results as I do, just copy the URL of the project, because it's a Java, as mentioned, it's a Java-based project. More specifically, it's a Java Maven Spring Boot project. So Spring Boot, just a web framework, much more than that, but it's just going to show a tiny website. Maven, if you're not used to Java, Maven just compiles your source code, runs some tests, and packages up the, let's say the jar file eventually, a jar file, which I can then send to Derek, and he can deploy the jar file on a machine. And that's literally everything you need to know. So I'm just going to go copy the URL, go back to my TeamCity Cloud instance. It's going to take probably a tiny second longer. This usually takes up to 2 minutes. And I'm just going to say that while that is happening, really, that is everything you need to do, just a couple of fields. And then apart from the startup time, you should be able to be running quickly.
So, Marco, with TeamCity Cloud, can you tell us a little bit about how it's hosted? Is it on AWS? Is it using containers, etc.?
Yes, it's actually hosted on AWS, and we have a couple of pretty beefy machines. So what you'll find is on one machine, you have a couple of isolated Docker instances running up and booting up, separate, isolated TeamCity Cloud servers, basically. They have their own database scheme in Amazon RDS, MySQL. And that's pretty much it, yeah?
Nice, nice.
Right, so it took a bit longer than usual, but now our cloud instance is ready. What you can do is you can just log in with GitHub, you could log in with Bitbucket, you could log in with GitLab, or just register with username and password configuration. I'm just gonna log in with GitHub because I'm already logged into my GitHub account. And I'm gonna carefully read through this license agreement, right? Just a bit quicker.
You mean you don't read every single line?
Oh, well, I'm a pretty quick reader. I'm just going to hit I agree. And that is hopefully the last dialog window we're going to see. And then, right, we're inside the TeamCity server UI. Now, what you see is essentially it's our so-called experimental UI. It's our new UI. We have an old legacy UI and the new one. By default, is activated in the cloud version. And it's a pretty empty server at the moment because, as you can see, we have no projects yet. There's a couple of tabs up here, and I'm going to walk you through some of them in a second. But what I really want to do is I want to have like a happy event in a minute or so. So I just want to create a new TeamCity project, TeamCity Cloud project, and I'm going to hit that Create Project button down here. Now, what's going to happen is you'll be redirected to our project wizard. And there's a couple of tabs you can see here. So you can choose from a repository URL, which I would actually, which you should choose, because here you can simply enter in any repository URL you have, like the one from GitHub Cloud, specify username and password, access token if it was a private repository, and then just hit proceed and you're done. If, like myself, you logged in with GitHub, for example, you also have these convenience tabs here, for example, from github.com, where you can actually select your projects from a drop-down list instead of having to enter the full URL yourself. But these are just really convenience tabs up here. So pick from a repository URL, paste in the URL, hit proceed, right? And it's going to take a second. And what TeamCity is going to do is it's going to try and connect to your repository, actually. And if that worked, like it did, you'll be sent to the next page, seeing that, first of all, the connection has been verified. Then TeamCity will tell you, hey, why not create a TeamCity project called TC Build Pipelines? The name comes from your GitHub repo. You see the URL of your repository, the so-called VCS root in version control system root in TeamCity. You will see the default branch, the main branch that TeamCity Cloud is going to poll every 60 seconds for incoming changes. And if there were incoming commits in that time frame, then TeamCity is going to trigger a new build by default. And last but not least, you also see the branch specification, which points to heads-star, which means that if you had feature branches, develop, prod, any feature branches you wanted to, or environment branches, that TeamCity Cloud by default would also build all of these feature branches. If you didn't want that, you can simply delete the branch specification, or you just leave it in by default. And then I skipped one field here where it says build configuration name. And that is coming from other CI tools. A build configuration in TeamCity is literally just a job. So job and build configuration is the same thing. Either you build a front end, you build a back end, you build the whole thing. And every TeamCity project needs a build configuration, which is called build by default. And that will do for what we have planned. We hit next, and then what you'll see is a bit of more of TeamCity's intelligence, I'd like to say. So you can see up here, you're basically in the administration UI, project TC Build Pipelines, editing our build configuration here on the upper left side. And then TeamCity said, hey, well, a job is, or a build configuration is fine, but it doesn't do anything at the moment. And you need to do something. In my case, I would need to be able to execute a Maven build step, a so-called Maven build step, because I want Maven to compile my project and run some tests. Now what TeamCity does is it actually connects to your repository, it scans the files inside the repository, and it says, hey, I found a POM.xml file, which means you are a Maven project. And that's why TeamCity automatically detects a so-called Maven build step. And by default, it says, hey, why not just run Maven with the goals clean test? And what clean test will do is compile your sources and run all the tests you have inside your project, which is a sensible default if you want to start out with a build pipeline. So you don't have to do any manual configuration, just select Maven, hit use selected, and you're good to go. And you'll see there's a nice little pop-up window here. You can now run the first build in this build configuration. Got it. I'm just going to hit run. And then the magic happens. I'm being redirected to the TeamCity UI. And I can see here there's a build queued waiting for starting agent with a couple of tabs. And while that is happening, we're going to take a tiny second to talk about a bit of theory about TeamCity Cloud. Because what you see here, the TeamCity UI, you will have your build log, for example. You will see who triggered the build and whatnot, but the actual build is not running on the TeamCity server. It's running on a so-called TeamCity build agent. And a build agent could be any machine that runs anywhere. It just needs the TeamCity build agent software installed, which is essentially also just a Java program. Now, if you're using TeamCity on-premise, then you'll have to basically manage your TeamCity build agents yourself. With a cloud version, we manage the build agents for you, which means now we're booting up. That's why it actually says waiting for starting agent here, which means you're booting up a build agent for your build. And then the build is happening on that build agent. It's going to send the build log and everything to the TeamCity server, so you can see it here. And then afterwards, the build agent is killed again, which you can also see if you hover over this icon here, this cloudy icon here at the top. JetBrains hosted agents are provided automatically. And you can see one agent is starting. Now, when you click the Agents tab, there's a couple of more things I wanna show you. Essentially, we have different types of agents. So we have a Linux medium agent, Linux small agent, and a Windows medium agent. Different operating systems, and also different, let's say, beefiness, if that makes sense. So you have different CPU and RAM, and these are essentially just Amazon EC2 machines that we boot up for you. And by default, we're always going to pick the cheapest option for you, so Linux small in this case, but you can also change it and make your projects be built with the medium instance or the Windows instance in that case. And you can see now there's an agent that was just booted up with that ID, and it's already running. It's running on Amazon EU West 1, and it just actually finished that build. And it will be killed in a second again, or in a couple of minutes again. No, it's already gone. That was quick. So when we look at our project overview page, where you now can see, you can see the green color, the color which I like the most. Let me just click that down here. And what you see is that there was one build with build number 1, which just executed successfully. There were 5 tests that passed. Linux, that was your agent that the project was built on a few seconds ago, and the whole build took 31 seconds. When you click the number, you'll be brought to, let's say, the build detail page, where you start out with the overview again. So when did it start? How long did it take? What was the agent? Who triggered the whole thing? You also have a changes tab, where you see the revision that was built. So that was the first run. So you just see the very first build. So you just see the latest revision that was built. If you started now pushing commits to your repository, then you would actually see those commits here that triggered the build. You have a test tab where you can see all the tests that ran successfully in this case, that is still looking good and not having broken red tests that people often ignore. So for now, just 5 green tests where you can see the duration, half a second, 2.5 seconds for my UI test, a couple of milliseconds for my unit tests, in which order they ran, and much more. You also have your build log up here, which, by the way, is also pretty smart. So what we're going to do is we're actually folding it for you, collapsing it, so you can. There's some UI work going on. You can also search directly in that build log. So, for example, Control F. You search for Maven, you'll see Maven highlighted, and it's actually pretty efficient and pretty smooth, pretty performant. You can, however, also download always download the full build log, open it up in Notepad++ or whatever you want. Right? And last but not least, we have an artifacts tab here. And this is something we need to, take care of now, because Derek later on wants a jar file from us. So at the moment, the only thing we do is we run Maven clean test, which shows the test output and compiles our source code. But Derek later on wants a jar file. And in TeamCity speak, what we need to do is we need to tell TeamCity, hey, your build agent, when it runs your Maven command, there is a jar file coming out of it, a so-called build artifact. And we need to configure that build artifact so we can send it to Derek later on. And let's just quickly do that, actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit Edit Configuration up here. I'm inside the project again, inside my build configuration here on the General Settings tab. And you can already see there's a nice little input field. What are your artifact paths? And you simply tell TeamCity, well, everything under the target folder, which is a Maven convention, if you find a jar file there, then please send it to my TeamCity UI so that later jobs/build configurations can send it to Octopus Deploy. So you're just going to put it there, right? Target wildcard.jar. And last but not least, you need to edit the Maven build step, the one we added earlier, clean test, and change it to, this is Maven specific, change it to Maven clean package, because package will actually build that jar file for you. Hit save, hit run again, and then hopefully in a couple of minutes, now the second time we won't be redirected to our front page, to the projects page, but fear not, when I click projects, I can see here's one build in the queue, and it's going to take a couple of seconds till the build actually executes. While that is happening, let's think about, because I've been talking about, I want to create a tiny build pipeline. At the moment, I just have one job. And in the real world, what would kind of happen is your build pipelines tend to kind of grow. So you would have a compile step maybe. You would have different testing steps that could run in parallel. And when I say steps, I actually mean build configurations/jobs. So I'm just trying to hammer in the word build configuration. So you could have many different testing build configurations which run tests in parallel. Then you might have some code quality gate and whatnot. And then you might have the deployment build configurations. So for example, deploy to development automatically, deploy to staging automatically or nightly, deploy to prod ideally also continuously all the time, or again, just do it manually. For now, as we don't have the time in this webinar to build a full-blown pipeline, what we're going to do is we're going to create an additional build configuration, which is called deploy to dev. So which is going to take that jar file that we just built, or that we're going to build in a second, and then pushes the package to Octopus Deploy, essentially, and then Derek can do his magic later on. Right. So that means while that build is still in the queue, what we're going to do is make sure you select the project here, TC Build Pipelines, edit the project, and then we're going to create a new build configuration. And we're going to do it slightly differently to the way before. We just put in the repository URL here. In fact, I want you to create the build configuration manually, because that way I can tell you a bit about some of the concepts of TeamCity without TeamCity doing everything for us. So I'm just going to go with manually here. I'm going to call the build configuration deploy to dev. There's an advanced option also where I can select this is a deployment build configuration, and you'll get nice little deploy, redeploy buttons and whatnot in the TeamCity UI. I'm just going to create that. And now we have a completely empty job/build configuration. Here on the left side, you have all the links where all the configuration basically happens for your build configuration. And now think of, you want to deploy to dev. And just as a thought experiment, think you want to deploy also on every push. So you want TeamCity to monitor your VCS route, your version control repository. And then every 60 seconds also deploy to dev automatically, which means you need to go to version control settings. And we already configured a VCS route in our project, which is our github.com link. So you can simply select that and you're good to go. Now TeamCity automatically does its thing. It tries to be a tiny bit too intelligent now. It says, hey, I'm going to scan your repository. It looks like you have a Maven repository, but I don't want that at the moment because I'm not quite finished yet with my Git repo. I said I also want every push. I want every 60 seconds. I want to trigger deployment to dev, which means I need a specific trigger. Let's add a trigger. You'll see what a trigger is in a second. Because VCS trigger says, hey, if someone pushes, if someone commits new stuff, run a build. Schedule trigger would be run a build nightly, run a build weekly, run it anytime you want. And there's a whole bunch of other triggers also. But for us, at the moment, a default VCS trigger for every branch just works. So every branch will be built as soon as there are changes. Right, that was that. So we're monitoring our VCS route. Builds are being triggered. And now what we want to do is we want to push stuff to Octopus Deploy. How does that work? You go to build steps. That was automatically configured before. You add a build step. And then you'll see for every technology that TeamCity supports, you'll have a so-called runner type. So if you want to build .NET projects, for example, you're going to choose a .NET runner. If you wanted to execute a command line script, you would choose a command line runner. If you wanted to do Docker stuff, choose the Docker runners, FTP upload runner, Maven, Gradle, you get the point. And there's also a whole bunch of different Octopus deploy runners. At the moment, a full release, a fully automatic release, and I think Derek has to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I need to push the packages, I need to create a release on the Octopus deploy side, I need to deploy a release. Again, for time reasons, we're gonna be happy with just pushing our package to Octopus Deploy for now, the jar file. So I'm just gonna hit Octopus Deploy here. And again, if you had Python or Unity projects, there's a whole bunch of runners you'll find in that drop-down list. So everything out of the box. All right, Octopus Deploy, push packages. And then what you need to do is you need to put in a couple of fields. So your Octopus Deploy URL. This is mine in this case. You need to put in an API key. You need to put in a space name, an Octopus Deploy space name, which is TeamCity. And then you just tell the Octopus Deploy runner, hey, take my jar file, wildcard.jar, and just push that to Octopus Deploy. That's all you need to do. And I think also there's an advanced option also here, a couple of them. For example, if you already pushed the jar file with the same name and the same version number to Octopus Deploy, should it fail if it exists, or should we just overwrite the existing jar file and whatnot? So you can configure all of that stuff here. Right, which means we have our version control settings set up correctly. We have our build step set up correctly. So it's going to push stuff to Octopus Deploy. There's one last thing missing, and that is actually linking our deploy to dev build configuration together with our build configuration. At the moment, it's two different build configurations, two different jobs. And this is, let's say, the most complicated thing for today. But fear not, I'm going to give you a very easy complication, not an easy complication, an easy explanation. Because build pipelines in TeamCity work a bit differently than they do in other tools. So first of all, you want to go to dependencies. And you set up build pipelines in TeamCity by creating so-called dependencies between build configurations. Now, In other build tools, you have job A triggers job B triggers job C. In TeamCity, you say that job C has a dependency on job B, which has a dependency on job A. So instead of being, let's say, push-based, it's more pull-based. It's a bit weird at the beginning. It makes absolute sense because TeamCity can make all sorts of optimizations along the way. It can say, hey, if I already have a working build A and working build B, and I just want to re-trigger build C 20 times, I do not have to rebuild job A and job B 20 times as well. I can just reuse their artifacts, for example. So it is pretty efficient, especially for bigger build pipelines. Right. And maybe one more word. Why is it called snapshot dependencies? Because in a build pipeline, it would be nice if you have like 5 jobs / build configurations. It would be nice if they all ran against the same snapshot, which means the revision of the latest Git commit, for example. If you have commit 1, it would be nice if job A, job B, job C all ran against commit number 1 or against commit number 2. And not that job A goes against commit number 1 and job B against commit number 10 or whatever. That's why it's called a snapshot dependency. All right, enough talk. Add a snapshot dependency on our TC build pipeline's build configuration. Let's hit save. So now we have a build pipeline, a very tiny build pipeline. And last but not least, we also need to say, hey, my deploy to dev configuration needs that jar file from the build, so you can give it to Octopus Deploy. And that's what you do with an artifact dependency, right? So you're just going to put wildcard.jar inside here as well, which means that, right, and you also might want to select the same build configuration again, build pipeline build, which means is that the first job runs Maven clean package, creates a jar file. The jar file is being sent to deploy to dev, which could run on a different build agent on a completely different machine. And then we're going to send that jar file from the build agent to Octopus Deploy. Right, that was a lot of talk. Let's hit deploy and let's see what is actually going to happen. You can see here, deploy to dev is running. And it's going to take us, again, a couple of seconds till the build starts. And let's see what happens.
So just whilst that's happening, Marco, I was wondering what's actually installed on your build agents by default? Is there any tool? Can you give us some insight there?
Right. So what actually happens is that on these build agents, we have a ton of software pre-installed. So you'll find the latest, let's say, Java version, .NET version, Python version, all sorts of different versions. You'll find a list of what's installed actually on our TeamCity Cloud homepage. So you'll specifically see which version is installed and what you can use if it's Java 8, Java 11, if it's a later version, whatever. But yes, there's a list, and by default, we try to put as much software on your build agent so you don't have to install anything yourself.
That's my next question, actually. Say, for instance, if someone finds a particular application that's not there, can you install it as part of your project dependencies on the build agent?
Right. So when it comes to that, you have a couple of options, actually. I mean, as you saw, you could run any command line script, for example, and fetch dependencies manually if you wanted to have some, I don't know, some special tooling that you need to download as part of your build. I mean, that is, let's say, the cheapest option, so to say, not the greatest one, but it definitely works. What you also have is TeamCity actually has super tight Docker integration. And with that, I mean, all the build steps you saw, what you can do is run them in a Docker, in a specific Docker container. You just specify the image. And if you had a Docker repository lying around with the images, with all your custom software, then just, choose that Docker image and it will run inside the Docker image and you'll be good to go. And the third option, just to finish off, is to just have your custom build agents, basically. So you build your own build agents, connect them to the TeamCity Cloud instance, and there you also have, you can install any software you wanted to.
Awesome. So you can connect your own build agents as well.
Yes, you actually can. They have a slightly different pricing model than essentially with your normal build agents that we host in the cloud for you. You basically pay for build minutes and a couple of other things. And with the self-hosted agents, you pay for concurrent builds. But again, check it out on the website. You can host them anywhere you want, connect them to the cloud. That works, just slightly different pricing.
If someone did want to get in touch to find out, which email address would they use to get in touch with
You
you?
can just send me an email. So either it's marco@jetbrains.com, that always works. I'm going to forward it to the team. And also use our UTrack, or just use the email address that you see on the TeamCity Cloud homepage. There's a ton of different ways of getting in touch.
Awesome.
Just finally, I'm going to double check the build log, which says here, so our deploy to dev job ran. I can see deploy, it hopefully push the packages. Yeah, right, that looks good. Push successful. That means that Derek should see a jar file now here. And just quickly, I'm showing you our teeny tiny build chain. Here you have our build configuration, which ran, and then deploy to dev ran. And that is everything I wanted to show you for now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marco. That was really cool. So I can confirm if you go into library and we see packages, there we go. We've got your TeamCity build
Cool.
pipeline there. So we've got the package. So this is Octopus. What you've got down here is down the left-hand side is normally your projects. Projects tend to be things that are shipped together at the same time. In this instance, it's your Java web app. And what you've got across the top is your different types of environments. So as you can see, we've got development, test, and production. So as you can see here, if you just jump in, we do have some infrastructure. I have just deployed this using Runbooks this morning. So we've got the dev Java virtual machine, we've got test, and as well as that, we also have production. Okay, so let's jump in. So one of the main reasons we haven't created the release or deployed everything is when you create the release, it snapshots, Octopus snapshots the deployment process. So if you created the release before I have a deployment process, no one's going to have a good time here. So what I'm going to do is, much like yourself, Marco, I am going to configure this live. So a little bit of information about your Spring Boot app. It's a set. It's got Tomcat available with it, so it's all self-contained. It's got H2 database. So what I'm going to be doing today is just taking Marco's package and deploying it to. In this instance, we have went for a Windows virtual machine. By all means, this would still work just as well using Linux as well. So let's jump in. Let's create a deployment process, shall we? So as with the jar, Marco has been so kind as to provide a self-contained, fully executable. So it has a contained database. It has the web app. So in this instance, you would normally use something like, say, Tomcat. So Octopus does have support for Tomcat. In this instance, as it's all self-contained, we don't need to do the Tomcat side of things. Tomcat is not on the server just now. What I am going to do is I'm actually just going to transfer the package that Marco's created. And again, all I need to do is execute the jar file. So let's jump in. So there we go. So on the screen, we're specifying, I'm just going to change that, transferring Marco's package. And then you've got some notes. Obviously, you don't want to disable this. In this instance, this has been pre-configured. So obviously, we've already got that Java virtual machine in Octopus. So I'm just going to configure the package. As you can see, we've got tc-build-pipelines. Then the transfer path. So in this instance, what you've got is, I will show you that in just a moment, but some of the things that I have created, I've already created as a variable. The main reason is it's really not that exciting watching me type in variables. So let's have a look. So we've got projects. So this is just, as you can see here, with our library variable sets, I stick to a very, it's a very kind of rigid, what I do is I name everything at the project level. It's project dot And then if there's a global, it's global dot. If it's an Azure one, it's Azure dot, and you'll see that later on. So there we go. We've got a custom installation directory. This is all going to run for all environments. What you can do is you can have it so it doesn't run for development. In this instance, it needs to run for all environments. Okay, so we're transferring Marco's package. At this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a script. And this is all because it's all self-contained. So
that's the beauty of Spring Boot. You just take the jar file, run it java-jar, and then
it just goes. Yeah, it's actually, whilst you're saying that, what are the main differences between a jar, war, and an ER file?
Right, that's a good question for Java certification. Now, essentially, I mean, jar files essentially were in the early days just command line tools you ran, and then war files were your web applications that you had to deploy to a servlet container like Jetty or Tomcat. Nowadays, as you already mentioned, Tomcats are embedded essentially inside the jar file, so it's just that is the main difference. War files were used earlier, like in the earlier days of Java deployments, yeah. And then ER files are even a layer on top of war files for full-blown application servers like Glassfish and whatnot. But jar deployments nowadays, pretty smooth and easy.
Nice, very nice. It's obviously this is the thing is the good thing is here is I've actually been it's the first time I've really been using Java with this, and it's actually been really straightforward. So what I'm doing just now is I'm just writing a little PowerShell script just to execute this. So obviously I'm looping through the directory. At this point, I'm just going to do a for each loop. So for each file, files. There we go. This is about as close as it gets as live coding from me, Marco. I'm now running start process. File. There we go. And then I think an argument list. Okay. And we want to do that silently. So okay, so files, yes, this is good. Yep. This is all good. So there we go for each loop and for each file. And then let's close that off. Oh. Feel the look from all the PowerShell developers. So here we go. There we go. We'll just yeah, that's good. And then there's no package reference. I'm going to run this for all environments. So what's this? Select save. Here we go. So at this point now, if we come back, you should see that we have a deployment process. It's very straightforward. Actually, what I'm just going to do is add in a little. Oh, sorry. I'm going to add in manual intervention just to spice things up. And I'm going to do that for just for production. So there we go. Please approve. What you'll probably find is I am going to just make everyone. Actually, let's do just me. So you can obviously select. So say if you're doing something with a database, you'd want the database administrators to do this. And then what I'm going to do is run only for production. What you want to do, where possible, you probably want to keep manual interventions out of it, but where I do see them is often in that kind of production stage. And one thing just to test is I just want to see you've got dev-java vm.west Europe. These really don't work at the moment because we haven't executed them. So there we go.
And as you said, I mean, it's a nice goal to also be fully automatic on prod, but
yes.
Easier said than done.
To be honest, I am the same. Like automate all deployments to production, but what I find in real life is that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
Obviously you hear about it and use cases and stuff like that, but it's yes. So in this instance, what I'm now going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and do the deployment to development. One thing just whilst that's happening, one thing just to this is actually taking no time whatsoever. So what we've got, let's jump into the task logs. Okay. Get child item. One moment. So let's have a quick look at. Oh, helps if I actually put the manual intervention at the beginning of the step. So let's reorder this. So let's say 1 moment. We'll reorder the step. We'll actually put that manual intervention at the beginning. Okay. So yep, there we go. So there's no. That is one thing that I forgot. So let's retry that one, Marco.
Yeah, let's give it a try.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, let me go. So this is what I was saying earlier on, obviously, with the release. Let's create the release. We'll create version 0.02. We'll go for it. We'll deploy to development. That live coding, you've got to love it all because of a dash. So in this instance now, it doesn't need to transfer the package as the package is already there. In this moment, I now have, correct PowerShell. What we should see, there we go.
Yes.
So what we've got is, it's a very obviously limited website. So as you can see, version is 1 and the database is H2. So this is actually running a H2 database.
Yes.
You could do this with MySQL as well. Lots of different stuff. Let's deploy this to test. We'll just take this all the way through. So you can see now production should spin up. So let's close off dev.
And why are you actually doing that? I mean, I guess you have a pretty similar setup to ourselves in terms of that there must be some sort of workers behind the scenes actually doing the deployments.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. So we actually launched Cloud about just over 3 years ago now. The story with Cloud was we were at AWS and everyone was asking us for a cloud product. So we went and actually, to be honest, it's identical to what TeamCity Cloud are doing just now. It running it using a virtual machine. It was back obviously with the RDS side of things. It was that on the database side. So similar, you don't run anything on the Octopus server. In this instance, what happens is it all happens on dynamic workers. So the workers that, in between each task, a worker is spun up. So that's one thing just to be aware of. It's not always the same worker that will run all of your steps. So they actually all run on. All run on. Now we are on Azure Kubernetes service, and thankfully things are a lot better. And one of the things that we struggled with was the cost of the cloud. When running on a VM, it was very high compared to running it as a container. And what we done there, Marco, was we actually run Octopus as a Linux container. So obviously ported everything using .NET Core, etc. So yeah, that relaunched now about 18 months ago. I actually recently done a webinar where we did actually run the Octopus, the Linux the container as an AKS. So what we've got now is we should see. Test is up. Yep, there we go. And then lastly, production is also up. So a couple of final things. So just one thing just to be aware of. I did actually spin up all of this infrastructure just before this webinar. And what's actually happened is it's spun up the Java server using ARM. And then from here, it's grabbing the IP, it's waiting for it. It's then registering the deployment target over the Octopus API, running some health check. And then in that fact, we're actually then running some dependencies. So you can see here as well, at this point, you're actually running a runbook within a runbook because obviously, you know how much we love layers in IT. So yeah, you can see here, we've just got a few things that get installed. One is Chocolatey. Again, this is how you can do that. You update your bits using on your workers. So because all of the workers are destroyed at the end.
I was actually wondering, I mean, the same questions that you asked me, essentially, with the how to install custom software on your workers and how does it work and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Chocolatey. That's how I tend to do it. Similar to what you were saying as well, we've got something called execution containers. Obviously, when we spin up a worker, it's a container. Obviously, with Docker has something Docker in Docker because again, layers. Why could you potentially run this on a worker when you can run it on a container inside a container? I think that's where it stops, but there may be more container layers in there, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
effectively that's what it is you can use Chocolatey to install software, for instance. Alternatively, you can bring your own workers with all your own tools, so you
Mm-hmm.
can actually have customized version of that. So yeah, this is how you do it. We tend to recommend doing it in a single step, because that's one thing that we don't do. The worker doesn't persist through different steps. So step one may run, and it may run on worker one. Step two may work on worker two. So
Right.
if you're doing anything with files, you'll need a persistent storage in place. But yeah, that's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
And there, that is basically Runbooks. That's Octopus in a nutshell. And one just last thing, I wasn't as brave as Marco spinning up the Octopus Cloud. Main reason is we do have some infrastructure accounts. So obviously, under here, you've got some Azure and AWS. These do take some time to propagate, so you wouldn't be able to do it. One thing just to let you know is our cloud instance up to 10 deployment targets is free. So you can come into octopus.com, either select sign in or get started. And then what you can do is we give everyone 10 free deployment targets on cloud on server, so you can run it on cloud
And
and also on premise.
how much storage do I get with that? I mean, I was just wondering. I mean, I pushed that jar file to you, and I guess I cannot just put unlimited jar files with unlimited size to Octopus, or how does that work?
Good question. Is we've only just increased it. It was previously 50 gig. We now have 1 terabyte. So we have lots of storage now. So that's something that we are, and there are some really cool improvements. But yeah, you can basically sign up for free using cloud, and it's always going to be free. Similar, it's much like you know, you pop in. So for instance, I own the webinar.octopus.app. If I wanted to have Derek demo, for instance, that's fine. I put in here. You've got a few regions. So we are in West US 2. We're in West Europe, which is Dublin, and then Australia East, which is Sydney. So yeah, pop that in, put your password, and then from there, that will spin up. You log in, and then you can add people all through our online control center as well. So yeah.
That would have been actually my last question, but now you answered it with the EU West and the Australia zone. So yeah.
Yeah, that's it though. It's so we are actually. Does whereabouts is TeamCity Cloud hosted, Marco?
It's also it's in Ireland, so EU West 1 at the moment.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
It actually looks pretty. It looks pretty similar. I mean, to what you're doing and what we are doing, and yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I think that's the thing, though. It's we didn't speak whilst developing our cloud products, but at the same time, is I think like that both of our products are really similar, and I think like that I can imagine in the future you may look at Kubernetes as well, and obviously because that's the main thing.
Yep.
One of the things why we used Kubernetes was it really drove down the cost of Octopus Cloud. That's definitely something we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Cool.
so let's look at the questions. Okay, of which there are many, Marco. So I hope
Right.
you're. So with this, great question actually. Why does the on-premise and the cloud version have different versions? On your website, it's 2021.1, and the cloud version is 2020.2.4.
Right, yeah, that's because 2021 launched or was released after we launched Cloud a couple of weeks earlier. And we didn't just want to do a major upgrade after 2 weeks, so we wanted to test stuff out first. Fear not, Cloud will be upgraded to the latest version pretty soon, actually. We just want to make sure that all the upgrades run smoothly and also set, a positive, is it called precedent for the future, for future upgrades. So in the future, the cloud will be on the latest version.
Excellent, thank you so much. So obviously, when you were first running your configuration, how does the agent, how does that basically get selected? Is that something you can pick manually, or is that something that works automatically?
Right. Yeah, I think I mentioned it. So what happens is by default, we're going to run the cheapest Linux instance, which will be Linux small. There's a concept in TeamCity which is called agent requirements, where you can basically say, hey, my build needs a build agent, which is, for example, Linux medium or the Windows. So you need an operating system Windows, and you want to have 6 CPU cores, a specific amount of RAM, whatever. So this is how you would essentially decide what agents we boot up if you want, for example, a beefier machine than the Linux small instance.
Excellent, thank you so much. Joe is asking about how to build a Docker container in TeamCity and then deploying to Kubernetes from Octopus. Joe, I would love to jump into that. I don't think this is the right webinar for it. What you have done, though, is given me an idea for another webinar with Marco, which is...
Yeah. It sounds like a good idea, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea. So keep an eye out on the website. We'll probably do that webinar. Okay, from David, we use TeamCity and Octopus on-prem. Is there any way to import builds and deployments to the cloud? I'll take that one initially, Marco. So one thing just to be aware of, David, is we now have, you can now import and export. So we have something called the Project Import Export tool. So on screen, you'll see the projects. If you come into here and then select, I always forget this is only just new. So there we go. We've got the import projects and the export projects. We just ran a webinar on this about 4 weeks ago. Definitely check that out. It's on youtube.com/Octopus Deploy. But yes, you can export from on-premise to cloud. One thing just to be aware of, your packages and your deployment targets don't come with you, but everything else does, library, variable sets, etc. What about you, Marco?
Right. So the thing is, there's not a super quick answer, but I can give you the more elaborate answer. Well, actually, let's say the short answer is no. There's not a great way of exporting your on-premise project into the cloud for a couple of reasons. So what you can do is in TeamCity, obviously you can export project configurations or also even make a backup. And you can import that backup into a different server, even into the cloud server. But the backups and these configurations, these exports, have to be created by the very same TeamCity version number. So, for example, you cannot just import and export backups between 2020.2.4 to 2021. So this wouldn't work. Then the next thing is when you do that kind of import, you lose your build logs, you lose your build artifacts, because we cannot just import into the cloud. If you have a big server, an on-premise server, we cannot just import terabytes of data with a zip file into our cloud system. So you would actually lose that as well. But other than that, you could get your project configuration, you could export it with these constraints and then upload it. That would kind of work. If, however, you're going through all that trouble already, you could simply switch to Kotlin DSL, to our configuration as code approach, and that pretty much works across any version numbers or whatever. So that will be a third option or second option, I guess. That would also work. So yeah, but there's no official great one-click backup migration path from on-premise to cloud.
Excellent. Thank you so much for answering that. Very detailed. Can there be an authorization step either on TeamCity before Octopus Deploy or a step on Octopus to run that? Azure DevOps has a really handy feature to gate steps with a manual authorization by another team member. I'm going to come in here this is effectively our manual intervention step. So within Octopus, what you can do is actually do manual interventions, and this is something that you can actually do within your deployment process. So quite often what we see is sometimes they want to do the database, then maybe the application, and everyone needs to do an approval. You would do that with manual intervention. Is there something similar in TeamCity, Marco?
So there is, let's say, a couple of workarounds for that. So, for example, you could say that a specific build configuration is password protected, where you could have a prompt. So before you run it, you'd have to put in a password, or you could set up permissions so that only specific people actually can, run the deploy process after all, or any build configuration, really, any sub project in TeamCity. So it's not exactly like someone triggers a build and then another person basically approves that build, but it comes pretty close, I'd say.
Excellent, thank you very much. I have a question about, can we use templates in Octopus? Yes, you can. What you can do is we actually we have steps built into Octopus. If you come to say for instance library.octopus.com, what you can do is you can actually see all of our step templates. Alternatively, you can also create step templates as well on here, so your own version of that as well. As you can see, I've got a whole bunch of the community step templates, but yeah, if you go to library.octopus.com, you'll be able to do that. Okay, so another question, do both the TeamCity pipeline and the Octopus pipeline need to be configured in the user interface, or can I store the pipeline configuration in my version control system together with my code, so that when I change my software, I can commit both my code changes and any potential build and or deploy changes in the same atomic commit? Great question. I'll let you go for that one, Marco, first.
Right. Yeah. So what we did is basically what you just saw is configuring TeamCity through the UI, which is one way, and the second way would be to use Kotlin code, our Kotlin DSL. So everything you saw, we can actually do through code, and in the end, you would just write a Kotlin file, not a YAML file, but have a fully powered programming language at your disposal. And you can, write your build configurations, build pipelines, everything that you can do in the UI, you can also do in Kotlin code. Check that in. And and then the build pipeline gets created from that Kotlin file essentially, and it doesn't just have to be one file. I mean, those Kotlin projects can grow pretty big, but this is essentially what you're looking for. So you'll have a versioned Kotlin file, you can roll back, see your changes, who made what changes and whatnot. So that's what you want.
Yeah, definitely. Octopus doesn't have that per se right this moment. It's something that's just about to be released. We're working on something called config as code. So what you will be able to do is actually both in the UI is actually sync your project back to say GitHub, for instance. That should be available in Q3 or Q4 of 2021. It's our big feature of 2021, and I've been playing with it, and it's fantastic. And it is super useful because you can store your entire code base in a single code base. So okay, so we are almost out of time. So yeah. Okay,
I think I just want to jump in because I saw one question in the chat early on. It was about the big Linux, instance type. Matthias, I think, asked it, and yes, there is actually. We have it hidden. They're available on a request. So just make a request, and we'll have a look at if we can enable the big Linux agents for you. Sorry. Yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I had another one about the CI/CD for deploying to Kubernetes. I think there's definitely a webinar there. Unfortunately, we won't have time today, so unfortunately, I can't answer that one. Other one is, do TeamCity Cloud build agents have user interface access? We run UI tests that run by Internet Explorer automation. The test tool is called EasyTest from DevExpress. So yeah, in short, do TeamCity Cloud build agents have UI access?
I don't know exactly what you mean by UI access. So whatever, I mean, you can run anything like some sort of headless Selenium or your Cypress tests, or even the easy tests, whatever, on a build agent. And if you can somehow, Cypress, for example, does it. It can make a video of the test. You can configure that as an artifact, and then you'll be able to see it on a TeamCity server. I think that's what you're going for, but I'm not exactly sure what you mean by can a build agent access any UI.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. Unfortunately, there is one last question. We're not going to have time for it, unfortunately. I'm keen. We've only got about 60 seconds to go. So first, I just want to say thank you so much to Marco. It's been a pleasure. I learned so much about Java from Marco. It was really great. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
too, Derek. Yeah, thank you too, Derek. It was a pleasure myself.
Excellent. And I want to extend that thank you out to everyone who came along today. A recording of the webinar will be emailed to you. That will likely come early next week once we've completed all sessions. We do have some upcoming events. So again, we are optimizing Octopus Clear Measure on July 14th, 15th, and the 19th. And then we're going to be doing multi-tenancy with Octopus. And then after that, we are going to go into release mode for config as code. So please do check that out. If you do have any questions, reach out. You can reach out to me at webinars@octopus.com. And by all means, you can also follow us on TeamCity and Octopus Deploy on Twitter. Well, that is everything. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Enjoy. Bye-bye.
Bye.